Hi, everybody. This is Liz Garden with the NAESP Principal Podcast. I am a fellow at the Center for Innovative Leadership, and I am excited to be here today with my co-fellow. I will let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Scott McLeod, professor of school leadership at the University of Colorado, Denver, and delighted to be Liz's co-fellow for CIL for the next few years.
And we are super excited to bring to you today. We have a conversation with Traci Mathena she's in Maryland at the Creative Community Charter School. Did I say that
Creative
right?
City Public Charter
Creative
School.
I messed it up. Okay, that's all right. Creative City Public Charter School. So let's start off just by having you tell us, a little bit about your school, Traci, and who are the students and the families that you serve, and what is the learning model at your school?
Well, Creative City Public Charter School is a kindergarten to fifth grade elementary school in Baltimore City, in Baltimore, Maryland. We are an arts integrated, place-based, and project-based elementary school. We are a Title I elementary school here in Baltimore City. The population that we serve currently is predominantly African American, but we are not a neighborhood school, so we serve the students from all parts of Baltimore City. We also are about 11 years old, so we are going into our second decade. I'm very excited for some of the things that we are doing as we are growing into our model. It's kind of fun, being a spunky new idea when it's first started, but then you have to make sure that it has what it takes to stand the test of time. And as we are transitioning into our second decade, we look forward to seeing what place-based arts integrated and project-based work looks moving forward in 21st century skills.
That's awesome. Thank you, Traci. I was fortunate to visit your school last spring. I absolutely loved hanging out with you and your educators and your students. You said something during my visit that has resonated with me deeply ever since. You basically said to me, this school was founded with the mission of providing children in these neighborhoods the kinds of education and learning experiences that children are receiving in more affluent neighborhoods over on the other side of the highway. I wonder if you could talk with us a bit about that strong equity orientation that you have and how that plays out on a day-to-day basis there at Creative City.
Well, I think the largest part of that foundational philosophy comes from being a parent-founded school. So what that looks like on the everyday basis would be that we strive to have our parents be partners in the work that we do. We have a shared governance model, which has a board of directors that is at least 50% parents. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that the people who want to send their children to our school and work within our model also have their voice and their ideas not only heard, but implemented here in our school. The equity piece in that is that no school should be off limits to any student. We feel that every opportunity for a student to learn should be given to every student. So we try to have partnerships with the arts to make sure that the same types of arts classes, the same types of arts experiences are available to our students as there would be for, say, a lot of people think the county schools have more resources and things like that. We want to make sure our schools have it as well. I think Baltimore City Public Schools actually does a good job of also trying to make sure that our students have those experiences. But what Creative City does at its core is we founded our school based on the principle that the people who are sending their children here have that shared governance and that voice in making sure that that equity is in place.
Thank you, Tracy. You know, Liz, I'm an East Coaster, like you, grew up right outside DC, so I'm pretty familiar with the Baltimore context. You know, there are a lot of really high-end independent schools out east. And I think that what we see affluent families doing is they're investing very heavily in the kinds of things that Tracy and her staff are providing for their students, right? So really rich, robust, art-based experiences, lots of opportunities for good critical thinking and problem solving, not just content recall, right? And I think we just see these disparities, particularly in urban metropolitan areas where, you know, very affluent families are basically buying themselves into schools to make sure that their kids have a certain kind of education, right? And then the public schools, of course, like Tracy's, are scrambling to try and figure out how to provide something similar. Particularly when, you know, your demographics might be a little more challenging and you're also concerned about foundational knowledge and skills and providing students, you know, what they need on that front as well. So, you know, I just think it's very commendable as we think about the work that Tracy School is doing to just recognize that there's some, particularly on the East Coast and West Coast, some large disparities in terms of what different schools can provide. And I think, you know, in public schools, we should always be paying attention to what the most well-off in our society think is best for their children, and then think hard about how do we do that for the rest of our children.
I also think that it you know, where you were speaking of like what the folks who are more well off might be doing for their children. I think the thought of there has to be wealth associated with providing those types of things is one of the issues that we're facing in public education. The exposure to rich experiences that will help students become critical thinkers is not a privilege, it's a right. And so what we need to do is understand that children from uh, uh, less wealthy areas deserve to have those same opportunities. But we know what economics does. We know that tax base means something. We know that money coming into certain areas is going to be different. That is not the fault of a child. So the adults, the people who are supposed to be looking at the way society has been inequitable for a very long time with regard to areas where with Black and brown populations. We need to recognize that just because the circumstance is they don't have money themselves does not mean they should not be afforded an education that's going to allow them to do great things, to be exposed to great ideas, to be able to become those innovative critical thinkers that we know they can become. Our expectations have to be that high for everyone, which means we have to invest in everyone. So I find that that's probably the biggest thing we need to make sure we all understand as educators, to make sure that areas like mine get that type of support.
Okay, I promised Tracy that this was only going to be audio and not video, so you're not able to see me like frantically like nodding my head in agreement. And everyone needs to, like, if you're listening to this podcast, which you better be, rewind and listen to what she just said on repeat. I would say quite a lot to get, because what you just shared is so important for more people to hear. So thank you for sharing that, because it is absolutely an educational right that we as the adults need to figure out how to make sure that every kid, well, one, we know they deserve it, but it gets that education, that rich education. So thank you for sharing that. I want to actually ask you, you know, something you mentioned, I think when you were first talking about your school, I'm curious, like, and this is going to be a chance for you to brag about all the awesome things that are happening at your school, or the cool things. But I really love the phrase, well, two phrases. One, I think I saw it on your website, of play-based. I'm a really big proponent up here in Massachusetts. We're doing a lot of work around play-based education, but also place-based. I feel like you don't hear that often, and I want you to tell us a little bit more about that, because both of those sound very interesting to me. But this is a chance for you to kind of brag about what are some amazing things, some successes you've had, some cool things you've seen happening at your school, because Scott has told me many of the things that you've shared with him. So our listeners definitely want to hear more.
Well, the play-based is at the kindergarten level. And so that's an inherent curiosity that comes with students, or any child actually, when they are experiencing wonder for the first time. They're looking at something and they have questions and they're inquiring. And that comes so easily through play. It's very natural, right? So in kindergarten, we have a play-based curriculum that is, strangely enough, because we are an educational institution, it is based on Common Core standards, where those standards are there. So we know what the world seems to say that a kindergartner should know. But we also know that sitting them at a desk and, drilling, skilling them at, 4 and 5 years old is not going to be the most effective means to do that, to teach them. So through play experiences, through centers, through their own innovative and creative play that is self-started by the student, the teachers, after having introduced a concept, maybe it'll be letter sounds, maybe it will be counting. After having introduced a concept, the students are going into different centers. At our school, one of the centers, my favorite one, is the one where they break things apart. So the kids had a television and, oh my goodness, the VCR, which no one seemed to know what it was. And breaking it apart to see what's on the inside. They're like, look at this stuff. And then one kid takes one of the little electronic boards and looks at it and goes, this looks like a part of a city. So the entire class decided that they were going to build a city out of this. But while they're doing this, they're pulling out pieces of wire and saying, and this can be a road, and this, piece here looks like it's a tower, but wait a minute, this could be a garage because it's got a circle thing. And we drive and mommy goes up this circle thing. And so as they're putting their city together, the teacher is walking around and asking them questions like, oh, garage. Ooh, what letter sound does that start with? And then the kid might say, G, or might say J. It's an opportunity to find out what they know, but they're playing. So you have introduced a skill, but you're also looking at your checklist of skills that the students are supposed to know in kindergarten. And so you are assessing them through that. Students learn writing by trying to label the things that they've now played and with or built, and they start labeling it. Our kids now are using, our kindergartners have these little cameras. And so they'll take pictures of whatever it is, and they will document what they've learned for the day. So now there's a documentation board outside of one of the kindergarten classrooms that just keeps becoming more pictures with more labels about what they've learned. And there's the picture, there's their written communication for it. So in play-based, what we're doing is we are not taking away the innate curiosity of a child in trying to fit it into a desk. What we're doing is we're letting that flourish and helping them build on the learning that they're already doing so naturally. And that's play-based. In place-based, that's a more it's really an interesting concept. We are using it as the place where we sit. In a lot of places, they talk about the natural environment. So what they're doing is it's using the outdoor natural areas to be the places not only where they learn physically, but how they learn and through which they learn. Uh, we take that to mean not only our location, but our neighborhood, our city, the environment in which we sit. So if we're talking about economics, we're teaching about economics, we are using the economics of Park Heights, which is where we sit, our the neighborhood in which we sit. Our second graders went out, and when they were learning about goods and services, they decided to go into our neighborhood and look around to see what goods and what services were available to the people who live there. They saw that we do not have a fully stocked grocery store. We have Family Dollars. We have some places that don't have a lot of good produce. And so the question for our kids were, why do we not have a grocery store when we have people who live here that have to walk in? Why do we have to go to a Family Dollar or something like that? So what goods and services do we need for this neighborhood? And that's how they're learning about economics. That's how they're learning about food deserts. We also have an urban farm. So that then becomes how they're learning about how places that don't have a fully stocked grocery store are working together to grow their own food for the neighborhood. And so that is place-based. How relevant is that to students to see in their own neighborhoods how economics works or doesn't work? And then understanding how to solve that problem. So yes, letters to the mayor are forthcoming, and things like that. They're learning all of that social studies. They're learning about economics through the place where we sit, not just from a book or from a text.
Traci, phenomenal, of course. That I get on fire every time I hear about the things that your students are doing. One of the things that we hear from principals and teachers in maybe more traditional schools is that we always hear some kind of variation of, well, we can't do that because we have a state test that we have to pay attention to, and we have accountability mandates that are foisted upon us, or we have curriculum standards that we have to cover, and so on. How do you balance all of that stuff with, the more divergent, deeper learning work that you do there with your students?
Oh, it is a struggle. It is a challenge. And I will be the first to admit it is not one that I'm going to say that we have been able to solve and overcome completely. We are still responsible for preparing our students for the Maryland Assessment Program's tests, and for third, fourth, and fifth. It is very challenging to try not to stick our children behind test prep so that we can make the needle move. I mean, that is a very real thing that any principal out there, I'm sure, understands what I'm saying. So there are those times where, I hate to say it, we are perpetuating inequitable systems by having our children have to do the test prep. But unfortunately, that is one thing we have to do in order to make sure that they're able to, for lack of a better way to say it, is play the game of getting into a good middle school, or the school is tied to its scores to show whether or not they are successfully preparing students. So I'll give you an example. Our students in third and fourth grade spent this summer doing a storytelling camp. And they created this wonderful play that they not only did all of the set design, they wrote the scripts, they, had the characters. It was wonderful. They put all of this together. They entered that into a competition, and it's getting ready to be put on stage at one of our theaters here in Baltimore City. We won the Young Playwrights Festival. And so, having done that, there are these kids who not only got the chance to express themselves, but learn how to edit, learn how, to bring to life a scene. And there is not one test out there that's going to show how those children did that, because some of them spoke into a computer, which then typed some of the things for them. But maybe they weren't going to be able to spell all of those words themselves, right? But we have a world where computers spell for us. So I hope spelling is not going to be something that my children won't get into middle school because of. It's like those are the type of things that I think all systems are looking at. So I will be the first to say that while I recognize the importance of making sure students are making steady progress academically, the light bulb does not go on at the same time for every child. So to say that there should be a full standardized way that every child should be assessed, and that's exactly where they should be, I I find that to be not only difficult as a school leader to have my staff continue to perpetuate, but it just seems unfair to the students. Yet still, we have to play that game and make sure that we are preparing our students for those assessments. Um, it takes a toll, to be perfectly honest. I think if you talk to educators around the country, you would probably hear the same thing. This is why we can't keep teachers. This is why they're leaving. And I have a friend that was a principal for many, many years who demoted herself to a vice principal because she did not want the headache anymore of what comes with the things to juggle with being a principal. I mean, sometimes it's not only against what your personal philosophy is, but you look at the littles around you and you wonder what it's doing to them. So it's one of those things that I know I have to balance, and it's part of the professional expectations of my job. And that's how we handle it. My staff knows it. The kids know it. They they know it. They know they have to. I mean, they still don't like it, but they know that this is something they have to do. But I also know that they understand all the other rich experiences that we have been giving them all tie in to the learning that I hope they're able to demonstrate on these standardized tests.
Coming from a principal who we just did our, first round of standardized testing, I don't know, like last 2 weeks, and my own children, I have a third and fourth grader. And I, couldn't agree with you more about the fact that it is not, what we are forced to do, is not a benefit for anybody in my mind. And, seeing kids, it breaks my heart what some kids go through with these standardized tests. And I don't know, listening to you talk about some of your other projects that your students were doing, I was like, I'm thinking like I really want to start pushing some elementary students to start doing a project-based study on the standardized testing in the game, and how we, because I think they would come up with some better solutions. Way faster than any of the adults would. So I think I'm
My
gonna
kids said, "Why can't they just come talk to us?"
yeah,
I said,
exactly.
"'Cause it's too many of you." I said, "It's hard enough for us to sit there and talk to you guys." I mean, but they're like, if they want to know what we know, they could come and ask. And I have always laugh about that because Maryland once had a standardized test that was called MISPAT, and what it was project based. It was the kids had tasks that they had to complete, and then they had to write about, like, how did you do this? Why did you make this decision? And it was too, I believe it got stopped. Honestly, trust me, I was not involved in any of these decisions, way above my pay grade. But I think it got stopped because it was too hard to grade. I mean, can you imagine having to sit down and have to grade every child's project response? And so I gotta imagine that got very expensive.
Well, I can tell you
It
because
took a long
Massachusetts
time.
has been trying to do that, and so we'll see. They keep trying to move to more project. I mean, performance tasks kind of thing, and we'll see what happens. But so, and I meant to ask you because as you were talking about the challenges of the principal job, how many years have you been at your school, Tracy?
This is year number 9. So
Okay,
I'll
so
start with 10
so
next year.
you've been doing this a long time. Um, so, you have learned a lot over the years, I'm sure. What advice would you have for other school leaders who are trying to do this really tough but important deeper learning work, and especially for people who are leaders in, leading in marginalized communities? What advice could you share?
Let's see. Well, I guess for any space that you enter, the first one is to get to know the space. Don't come in thinking that you know exactly what to do that's better than the people who might have already have been there. So that's the first. The second is um, gather around you people that have strengths where you have either areas of weakness or areas of improvement for yourself. Because what you don't want to do is get a whole bunch of people that have the same skill sets or the same experiences as you. That's what brings the richness. Find your tribe. Find the people that understand what the philosophy is, what the vision of your school is, and get those people to stay and help build. Listen to the ideas and continue in that journey together. I feel like a lot of people talk about building structures and then delegating and, having this person do that. And I've always been a consensus builder. And I got to tell you, it hasn't always, it hasn't always worked out the way that I wanted it to. But making sure that everybody can be at the table and have pieces of the conversation, whether it is your students, your staff, the families, your communities in which you sit, having all of those voices be part of the vision and mission of the school and moving it forward so that everyone feels like they are vested is going to truly create things that you did not know could be created. Everybody brings something different, and it's wonderful to seek those things out.
Thank you, Traci. We're nearing the end of our time here, and I think Liz is going to wrap us up. I just want to say to everyone who's listening, there's an incredible amount of love and care at Creative City. And so if you ever get a chance to visit, you will see that. That is quite tangible as you walk the halls and interact with Traci and our educators. It's a really great place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Traci. People are going to get so much out of. I know we only had a short time with you, but you shared some really amazing, important thoughts about education in general, but also just about the awesomeness that's happening at your school. So kudos to you for all the hard work you're doing, and hopefully, I would love to be able to come down there to visit your school.
You are
So.
welcome. Our doors are open.
Yes, okay, I can't wait. All right, thank you so much for listening to NASP's Principal Podcast.